Based on shocking real events, Evil Unbound 731 reveals the dark secrets of a hidden war experiment where humanity meets unimaginable horror, and one man's survival uncovers the truth the world tried to forget. So now let's begin the story. In 1945, Japan's control over the Pacific was slowly collapsing. Defeats are piling up, and countless soldiers are losing their lives with each passing day. Amid this crisis, a tense meeting takes place. During the discussion, Commander Shiro Ishii of Unit 731 presents a strange and unsettling demonstration to his superiors. In front of everyone, he uses a device he claims can purify contaminated liquid. To prove his point, he runs a shocking test, producing clear, drinkable water from waste. The room falls silent as he confidently drinks it himself, trying to convince them of his invention's potential. Ishii then pushes a far more dangerous idea. He argues that Japan should abandon international rules like the Geneva Convention and turn to biological warfare, using plague-carrying insects and animals as weapons. By February, his proposal was accepted under a secret plan known as Operation Cherry Blossoms at Night. Soon, Unit 731 halts its other research and focuses entirely on producing infected carriers and related materials. Meanwhile, in China, a man named Wong approaches a group of foreign traders. Introducing himself as a former prisoner who managed to escape, he presents a similar filtration device. With the plague spreading rapidly, he explains that people are desperate for clean water and asks the traders to recreate it. Skeptical, one of them questions whether it actually works. To prove it, Wong demonstrates the device. But before he can finish, Japanese soldiers suddenly storm in. Chaos erupts. Wong reacts quickly, throwing the liquid at them and attempting to escape through a window. However, before he can get away, a soldier strikes him, knocking him unconscious. A short while later, Wong regains consciousness. His vision is blocked by a hood, and he soon realizes he's trapped inside a train packed with prisoners. In one of the more guarded compartments, Shiro Ishii travels comfortably with his daughters, watching a magician named Sun perform tricks to entertain them. Nearby, soldiers quietly take photographs of the act, documenting everything. When the train finally stops, the prisoners are dragged out and marched into a camp. There, they're forced to stand through a speech praising Japan's dominance and power. Among them, a man named Bushwan desperately searches for his wife, Sushin. The moment he tries to reach her, soldiers strike him down without hesitation. Observing everything carefully, Wong notices an elderly man carrying a large amount of money. Seizing the opportunity, he takes a few notes and claims he has connections that might help them escape. Trusting him, the old man hides the rest of his money inside the boot of an interpreter named Sergei, explaining that his family are only performers and not a threat. Despite this, the guards show no mercy. Families are separated, men forced in one direction, women in another. Inside a narrow corridor, Wong hands the money to Bushwan, telling him it may be his only chance to see his wife again. Soon after, the men are ordered to strip and pushed into a bathhouse. The conditions are brutal, and in the chaos, the hidden money slips away, floating helplessly in the water. Then, distant screams and gunshots echo through the building. Suddenly, a group of Soviet prisoners rushes into the bathhouse, slamming the door behind them. One of them stays back to block the entrance, while the others search for another way out. But the rear exit is locked. Realizing there's no escape, the Soviets quietly step into the water. One by one, they share their names, asking the others to remember them, hoping their final moments won't be forgotten. Moments later, the doors are violently forced open as Japanese soldiers storm inside. Leading them is Officer Imamura, who immediately shoots the man guarding the entrance without hesitation. She turns her attention to the remaining Soviet prisoners, issuing a harsh warning. However, the interpreter, Sergei, subtly changes her words, secretly trying to alert his fellow countrymen. Imamura quickly senses something is wrong. Without warning, she strikes Sergei down, realizing he isn't being truthful. At that moment, Wong steps forward and interrupts. Calmly, he repeats what Sergei actually said, revealing that he understands multiple languages. His unexpected honesty catches Imamura's attention. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts when a mysterious figure rises from the water, someone who had been there unnoticed the entire time. After a brief exchange, the figure assigns Imamura her next task before quietly leaving. Soon after, the prisoners are separated once again and locked inside their cells. Wong, Bushwan, and the magician's son are placed together in one cramped room. Inside, they meet a quiet prisoner named Kan, who has drawn strange cross-like marks all over the wall and keeps a small rat as his only companion. Trying to build trust, Wong speaks to him, but Kan remains distant and unresponsive. After a moment, Kan lifts his pillow, revealing a hidden hole in the wall. The rat slips through it, disappearing into the next cell. On the other side, in the women's section, a young girl gently takes the small ribbon tied to the rat and adds it to a growing collection on the wall. silent evidence of a fragile connection between the separated prisoners. The next morning, the prisoners are fed through a narrow opening in the cell door. They are told that they will be released once they are cured. Wong reflects on everything he has witnessed, especially the fate of the Soviet prisoners. Wanting to hold onto his identity, he finally speaks his name aloud. Bushwan follows, revealing that his wife, Sushian, is a doctor and that she is currently pregnant. Sun also introduces himself, observing the situation carefully. He points out a disturbing truth. If the Japanese had intended to kill them immediately, they would not be feeding them at all. Suddenly, two guards arrive and drag Wong away. In a burst of resistance, he attacks one of them, trying to strangle him. The sudden chaos terrifies Bushwan, who freezes in panic. The second guard quickly reacts and strikes Wong on the head, knocking him unconscious. When Wong regains consciousness, he finds himself strapped to an electric chair. Nearby, another prisoner is already being subjected to repeated electric shocks, clearly held there for much longer. Officer Imamura calmly explains that this is the punishment for those who disobey orders. She walks past a disturbing collection of torture instruments, finally selecting a burning iron poker. She brings it close to the prisoner's face, but in a sudden moment of defiance, he manages to block it with his foot, momentarily disrupting her control. Afterward, Imamura takes Wong to a screening room. There, she makes it clear that his value lies only in his ability to speak multiple languages. Wong is even allowed to smoke a cigar as a film plays on the screen, showing Sergei leaving the camp along with his family. Imamura then declares that Wong will officially replace Sergei as the camp's interpreter. The following morning, Wong begins his new role. His duty is to move through the prison corridors, distributing food to prisoners while repeating the same message, that Japan promises freedom once they are cured. Since the camp holds prisoners from different countries, Wong constantly switches between languages as he moves from one section to another. His routine is suddenly interrupted when a woman dressed elegantly enters the corridor, accompanied by priests. Music plays softly as part of a strange ceremonial procession. Imamura uses this ceremony as a cover to announce that certain prisoners are being released. During the commotion, a Soviet prisoner tries to grab an apple from the food cart, but Wong quickly stops him. The man mocks Wong's Russian, pointing out that his pronunciation is poor. Outside the prison blocks, soldiers continue their training exercises, striking straw targets with precision. Meanwhile, Imamura approaches officers Yoshia and Ikitsuwa, handing them the marbles taken earlier from Sun's performance. At the same time, a superior officer notices an apple in their possession and immediately confiscates it. He gathers the troops and warns them strictly that the apples are not to be eaten, claiming they are contaminated with bacteria. Yoshia and Ikitsuwa continue talking casually among themselves, ignoring the warning. Frustrated, the officer sharply slaps them into silence. Sometime later, while Wong is cleaning one of the corridors, he notices a group of scientists arriving inside the facility. They begin taking blood samples from all the prisoners. In exchange, each prisoner is given an apple. The entire process is carefully filmed as part of a controlled experiment. After collection, the blood samples are taken to the laboratory and suspended from the ceiling for analysis. As Wong continues his daily deliveries, the situation grows tense. Some prisoners begin to see him differently and even call him a traitor for working so closely with the guards. Later, he once again witnesses the ceremonial procession where recovered prisoners are escorted out of the camp. Desperate, Wong pleads with Imamura, asking to be released as well. Imamura coldly responds that he will only be freed once a replacement interpreter is found. One afternoon, an opportunity finally appears. A soldier leaves a door slightly open without properly locking it. Seeing his chance, Wong quietly slips out of the restricted cell area. He eventually stumbles upon a room that appears to be a filming studio, where Japanese soldiers are producing propaganda footage. While exploring the space, officers Yoshia and Ikitsuwa casually start playing a recorded film on a large screen. What appears on the screen shocks Wong. Sergei and his family are shown being trapped inside a gas chamber, slowly dying while the footage is documented. Hearing the soldiers laugh at the recording, Wong is devastated. It becomes clear to him that no one is truly being released, and escape is nothing but an illusion. In a nearby bathroom, Wong changes into Sergei's boots and discovers the hidden cash he once saw earlier. He decides to conceal the money inside a book for safekeeping. But when he opens it, he finds the same strange markings drawn by Ken, patterns identical to those on the prison walls. Realization hits him. It is not random. It is a map of the entire compound, located deep in an isolated, unreachable place. Later, the prisoners are brought once again into the screening room. This time, they are handed Japanese flags and ordered to sit in silence. Wong tries to speak with Ken about the mysterious book and the markings he discovered. However, Ken deliberately changes seats, avoiding any interaction with him. Soon after, the guards begin playing a propaganda film praising Japan's strength and greatness. As the footage plays, one prisoner suddenly stands up and begins repeating the chants shown on screen, waving the flag in an attempt to show loyalty. Wong quickly realizes that the man is trying to gain favor with the captors in order to survive. Seeing this, Wong reluctantly imitates him. One by one, more prisoners follow, until the entire room is filled with forced chanting and flag waving. Amid the chaos, another prisoner seizes the moment and violently strikes Wong, accusing him of betrayal. Meanwhile, in May, news reaches the facility that the United States has bombed Tokyo. In response, Shiro Ishii receives urgent orders to accelerate his biological warfare program. Inside the laboratory, the situation worsens rapidly. Large numbers of prisoners are deliberately infected with plague, while scientists continue breeding rats and fleas, packing them into crates for distribution. One day, Wong is blindfolded with a sack over his head. A soldier spins him repeatedly to disorient him before pushing him down a long corridor. He is taken into an elevator leading underground. As he descends, Wong strains to observe his surroundings through the thin fabric of the bag, desperately searching for any clue that might reveal the true layout and location of the facility. Eventually, the prisoners are brought out into the yard, where a new group of captives is waiting. Wong is forced to translate orders, directing them toward their assigned bath sections. Later, while the corridor becomes empty, Wong takes a risky chance. He quietly begins pacing and counting his steps, carefully recalling the number of turns and spins the soldier used while escorting him earlier. Using this mental map, he manages to locate the elevator once again. A guard nearly catches him, but Wong quickly pretends to be cleaning the floor. He even starts wiping near the elevator to avoid suspicion. When the guard is distracted, Wong seizes the moment, enters the lift, and descends alone. However, on the lower level, a group of scientists suddenly enters the elevator, forcing it to go back up. Wong has no choice but to continue pretending to clean while trying to slip away with his cart. But Imamura is already waiting for him. Wong is taken directly to a torture chamber. Inside, he witnesses horrifying experiments. One woman's arms are being painfully flayed while she is restrained. When Wong tries to shut his eyes, a soldier forces them open, making him watch every second. Next, a man's arms are frozen solid and then shattered with a hammer-like tool. Other prisoners are tied to wooden frames inside a freezing chamber, left exposed to extreme conditions. A soldier records everything on film, while another sketches detailed diagrams of the procedures, documenting it as part of their research. Imamura warns Wong that he was never supposed to see this level of operations. She tells him that he has broken her trust, and if he repeats such actions, he will become a test subject himself. Later, back in the cells, a guard arrives and announces that Sun has been selected for release. Relieved but emotional, Wong hands Sun some apples and watches as he is taken away with other freed prisoners. He stays silent, knowing deep down that something is wrong and that they may never truly survive outside. But just as the prisoners approach the exit, Officers Ikitsuwa and Yashiwa change their minds. Fascinated by Sun's magic trick, they decide they want him to stay and perform for them again. Sun is abruptly returned to his cell. For the first time in a long while, Wong smiles, only to lose it again when he realizes that another prisoner, the old man, has been selected to replace Sun. One day, during outdoor exercise, a Soviet girl begins singing an anti-fascist song. Tension immediately fills the yard. When a ball is kicked too high, a hidden gun system instantly shoots it down, forcing everyone to drop to their knees in fear. In the chaos, Wong accidentally drops his hidden book, but quickly conceals it under his clothing again. Ken notices this and finally reveals the truth. He has been planning an escape all along. He shares the details, and Wong agrees to cooperate. That night, Wong pretends to read the book aloud, laughing loudly on purpose to avoid suspicion. Soon, Ikitsuwa arrives to confiscate it, but while flipping through the pages, he unknowingly discovers Kan's hidden map of the facility. Suddenly, Wong makes a desperate move. He strikes the guard with a water filter and quickly overpowers him, choking him until he collapses. Acting fast, Wong removes the guard's hazmat suit and disguises himself. He places the body onto a stretcher and pushes it toward the elevator. At the checkpoint, Yashiwa is stationed nearby. However, he does not suspect anything unusual and allows Wong to pass, directing him toward the crematorium. Using Kan's mental map as a guide, Wong follows other soldiers carrying stretchers. Eventually, he arrives at a chilling chamber filled with hundreds of stacked bodies. Inside, workers are seen processing the corpses, cutting them apart, while others throw remains into large burning furnaces. When Wong attempts to dispose of Ikitsuwa's body, he is suddenly grabbed by a surviving prisoner hidden among the corpses. The man warns him that the exit route ahead is extremely dangerous and heavily guarded with gunfire systems outside. Realizing escape is impossible through that path, Wong retreats. He returns to his cell area and destroys the hazmat suit, flushing the remains down the toilet to erase evidence. Meanwhile, Ken continues his secret plan. He sends the rat through the hidden passage into the women's cell. Inside, Sushin wakes up and is shocked to find Imamura asleep nearby. After Imamura leaves, Sushin speaks softly to the rat. Sensing something is wrong, she tells it not to search for the girl anymore, as she has already been taken away. The rat eventually returns to Kansas, noticing the ribbon still attached to it. Ken immediately understands that something terrible has happened to the girl. At that moment, the disappearance of Akazawa is finally discovered. Instantly, alarms begin to blare throughout the facility, fearing what may happen next. Ken cannot bear the thought of Sun being tortured. In a desperate act of mercy, he tries to smother Sun with a pillow, hoping to end his life quickly and spare him from suffering. But Bushwan intervenes, begging for Sun's life and stopping Ken in panic. Soon after, the prisoners are forced out and lined up against the corridor walls, while soldiers begin searching each cell methodically. Each prisoner is called out by their assigned number. However, Ken suddenly refuses to respond and demands to be addressed by his real name instead. This defiance enrages Imamura, who immediately begins beating him in front of everyone. Despite the assault, Ken continues to insist on his identity and humanity. Losing control, Imamura draws her sword and makes a brutal decision to kill him. The prisoners panic and nearly break into chaos, but armed soldiers quickly suppress any attempt at resistance. Ken's body is dragged away, leaving a long trail of blood across the floor. In the silence that follows, Wong gently closes Sun's eyes one last time, offering a quiet final farewell. The next day, Wong is forced to clean up the aftermath, scrubbing blood from the corridors while watching another group of prisoners being escorted out through the ceremonial process. Sun quietly urges Wong not to give up on the escape plan. This pushes Wong to recall everything he has overheard so far. Among the soldiers' conversations, he remembers mention of a Japanese holiday on July 2nd, a potential opportunity when security might be reduced. As time passes, the situation inside the camp worsens. More prisoners begin falling ill with the plague, and fear spreads through every cell. Inside the laboratory, chaos erupts when a desperate man tries to save his infected wife. A guard stops him, and in a panic, the man bites the soldier. To contain the situation, another guard immediately draws a blade and cuts off the infected arm to prevent further spread. When new prisoners arrive, Wong tries to confirm the exact date, but he receives conflicting answers from different sources, leaving him uncertain. Later, Imamura unexpectedly assigns Wong to clean a classroom where Ishii's daughters are being indoctrinated daily. At night, Sun and Bushwan begin coordinating secretly. Using toilet paper, they write coded messages and send them through Can's rat to other prisoners, spreading details of the escape plan. Bushwan also chooses a name for his unborn child, which Wong carefully delivers to Sushin by carving it onto an apple and sending it through the system. Sometime later, a sick woman is brought into Sushin's cell. The women immediately tear strips of cloth from their sleeves to cover their mouths in fear of infection. When Wong passes by, Sushin quietly asks him for ingredients to prepare a basic remedy. In the corridor, a paper airplane made of money suddenly drops to the floor. Yashioa rushes forward to grab it, but Wong reacts quickly, stepping on his hand and stopping him. Wong is then taken into the cell area, where Sun uses scattered money to distract Yashioa, keeping him disoriented. Using the distraction, Wong steals Yashioa's key and enters a storage room to collect supplies for Sushin. However, he cannot find sulfur. Just then, a hidden wall opens, and Ishii's daughters appear while chasing their pet rat. They notice Wong and strike a deal with him. If he helps catch their rat, they will not report him to their father. Wong quickly manages to catch the rat. In return, the girls reveal that sulfur is hidden inside ammunition. Back in the cell area, Sun returns the stolen money to Yashioa, snapping him out of his confused state. Wong returns the key before Yashioa finally regains control and leaves, taking the money with him. At the same time, Sushin carefully burns sulfur extracted from the bullets, creating a thick, smoke-like fog. She then combines it with the remaining ingredients to prepare a crude medicine. After administering the remedy to an infected woman, the other prisoners in the cell create a diversion, throwing sulfur into the air and igniting it, producing sparks that resemble fireworks. From a nearby window, Imamura observes the scene and becomes visibly frustrated. She harshly criticizes her team, angered that an ordinary Chinese prisoner has managed to counter the plague more effectively than their own controlled experiments. 3 days before the planned escape date, Wong is taken outside. There, Imamura is overseeing a brutal game where prisoners are forced to play tug-of-war. The rule is simple. The losing side will be sent away, meaning execution. Bushwan and Sun are forced to compete against each other. Bushwan easily gains the upper hand, overpowering the boy. But instead of finishing the match, he leans in and tells Sun that he has hidden a key inside the rat's passage. After revealing this, Bushwan deliberately releases the rope and accepts defeat. As the losing group is led away, Bushwan quietly asks Wong to protect and bring his wife, Suxian, with him during the escape. Meanwhile, after the event, Wong assists Ishii's daughters in burying their dead pet rat, marking a rare moment of silence in the otherwise brutal environment. The next day, Wong is once again taken outside as a new batch of prisoners arrives at the facility. However, one of the scientists expresses frustration. Most of the captives are already sick, making them unsuitable for ongoing experiments. Shortly after, a group of prisoners is placed inside a sealed experimental chamber filled with rats. The situation quickly spirals out of control as the animals become violently agitated. Meanwhile, the scientists report to Shiro Ishii that they have finally engineered a virus strain with a fatal effectiveness rate exceeding 90%, marking a terrifying breakthrough in their biological research. On the day of the planned escape, most of the Japanese personnel leave the compound to celebrate the Yamakasa festival in town, leaving the facility less guarded than usual. Inside the corridor, Wong deliberately drops apples to create a distraction. When a suspicious guard approaches him, Wong quickly grabs him and suffocates him in a desperate struggle. A second guard witnesses the attack and calls for reinforcements, but Wong slams his head against a door frame, knocking him unconscious. A third guard rushes down the stairs, but Wong reacts instantly, tripping him, causing a fatal neck injury in the fall. After securing the area, Wong moves through each cell, leaving apples behind with carved messages inside them as part of the escape signal. Meanwhile, Sun discovers the hidden key inside the rat passage and frees himself, then begins unlocking the other cells one by one. Soon, prisoners flood into the corridors, including Suxian, who finds a pair of small baby shoes crafted from toilet paper, made earlier by Bushwan as a silent message for their unborn child. Two guards arrive to respond, but upon seeing the overwhelming number of escaped prisoners filling the corridor, they panic and immediately flee the scene. As the prisoners push toward the exit, they encounter more guards blocking their path. A violent clash breaks out, and in their desperation, the prisoners overpower them and continue running forward. Another unit of soldiers arrives with high-pressure hoses, spraying freezing water to stop the escape. But the prisoners, driven by fear and determination, fight through and bring them down as well. The group reaches the elevator and moves up toward the main level. While running, Wong suddenly recalls the warning from the survivor in the incinerator room. The memory of brutal deaths and burned bodies flashes in his mind, distracting him and causing him to momentarily lose his sense of direction. Realizing the confusion could cost them everything, Wong decides to split the group. Sun is instructed to lead one route, while Wong takes Suxian along another path. As Wong and Suxian move through a different corridor, they are confronted with horrifying scenes inside the facility. Through open rooms, they witness prisoners being subjected to extreme experiments, some frozen to death, others burned alive, and some exposed to corrosive chemicals that destroy their limbs. In another room, a man's organs are being forcibly extracted, while elsewhere another prisoner has been disfigured beyond recognition and is being further dissected. Shaken but determined, Wong puts on a hazmat suit and disguises himself. He hides Suxian inside a transport cart and pushes her toward the incinerator section. However, Suxian notices Bushwan's body among a pile of corpses. Overcome with emotion, she climbs out of hiding and rushes toward him. But Bushwan, already on the edge of death, sees her for a final moment before passing away. Wong quickly pulls Suxian away and rushes toward the exit door. But as they reach it, they are suddenly confronted by Imamura and her armed soldiers, who are waiting on the other side, blocking their only way out. Afterward, Suxian is taken into a hidden laboratory filled with glass capsules containing fetuses preserved for experimentation. Wong is forced to watch helplessly as scientists proceed with a horrific procedure on Suxian, extracting her unborn child. Overwhelmed by shock and helplessness, he repeatedly hits his forehead against the glass window until it is smeared with blood. Unable to endure the sight any longer, Wong collapses in emotional breakdown as the newborn is taken and marked with the same symbol associated with Ishii's daughter's experiments. In another capsule nearby, Imamura is seen suspended in a similar chamber, also bearing the same mark. In fragmented memories, she recalls moments of Suxian singing gently to a child in the cell, adding a disturbing layer to her detached state. Sometime later, the compound escalates its operations further. Scientists begin producing biological bombs filled with infected fleas. To test the weapon, prisoners are taken to an open field and tied to crosses surrounding a large pit. A group of Japanese soldiers is positioned among them and administered a vaccine. Observing the results, a balloon-like dispersal device rises above the field and suddenly releases its payload. As chaos begins, Wong struggles violently against his restraints and eventually frees himself. As the infected fleas spread, he quickly releases Sun, and together they move across the field, freeing as many prisoners as possible. When the vaccinated soldiers realize the situation is spiraling out of control, they attempt to suppress the uprising. A brutal and chaotic battle erupts between them and the prisoners. At first, the prisoners gain the upper hand due to their overwhelming numbers. However, the advantage does not last long. Reinforcements arrive, and Japanese troops form a perimeter around the pit, opening fire and pushing the fight into a deadly stalemate. Anyone attempting to flee is immediately forced back at gunpoint. A few prisoners try to resist, but they are met with brutal force as flamethrowers are used to suppress them. Some are burned alive on the spot, while others are pushed straight into the pit. The entire field turns into a scene of complete destruction, while the higher-ranking Japanese officers calmly observe from a nearby tent, as if it were nothing more than a routine demonstration. By evening, the aftermath begins. The bodies of the dead are dumped into the pit and covered with ash in an attempt to conceal the massacre. Amid the chaos, Sun regains consciousness and finds Wong nearby. Wong quickly pulls him close, shielding him from the falling ash. In a desperate attempt to escape, Wong lifts Sun onto his shoulders and begins climbing the walls of the pit. However, Sun loses his grip and falls back onto the pile of bodies below. In that moment, other surviving prisoners begin to wake up. Driven by desperation, they form a human structure against the wall, creating a makeshift path upward. Wong and Sun climb over them as the prisoners, even in their final effort, proudly shout their names one last time. Eventually, the two reach the top, where a soldier is waiting. Sun reacts first, grabbing the soldier's leg and pulling him down into the pit. Just as Sun manages to get out, another soldier fires at him. In the struggle, Sun retaliates, causing both of them to fall together. Meanwhile, Wong reaches the edge and grabs Sun's hand, trying to pull him up. But the soldier also pulls Sun downward with force. Wong struggles, but he does not have enough strength to hold on. Sun finally releases his grip, and the human pyramid collapses beneath them. All the prisoners fall back into the pit, leaving Wong alone at the top, helplessly watching everything fall apart. When Wong tries to escape, he is shot by a soldier as well. In the end, no survivors remain. Eventually, Japan loses the war. In a final attempt to hide all evidence, the entire compound is destroyed by bombing under Shiro Ishii's orders, ensuring that every trace of the experiments is erased. Before the destruction, Ishii manages to escape by plane along with his daughters, Sushin's baby, and all remaining research documents. Once he reaches his hometown, he stages a fake funeral for himself, allowing him to disappear from public record and avoid any future trial. Later, in a controversial deal, the United States grants Ishii and his associates immunity in exchange for all the experimental data collected at Unit 731. As a result, the crimes committed by the unit are never formally punished. And that's how the story of Evil Unbound 731 comes to an end, a chilling reminder of how far humanity can fall when power has no limits. If this video gave you goosebumps or made you think, don't forget to like, share, and comment your thoughts below. And make sure to subscribe for more dark and powerful movie recaps like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.